Hello everyone, I have come with chapter number 3, the making of global world. This is the chapter of history, and before these chapters we have completed two more chapters. So you can keep learning from there, and I have added these all video in playlist. So keep revision from there. So first let's start this chapter, then we can discuss and those all important facts and as well as other important facts also. The making of a global world. Trade, the activity of buying, selling, or exchanging goods or services between people, firms, or countries. Next, global interconnectedness as early as 300 BCE, before the Christian era. An active coastal trade linked the Indus Valley civilization with present day West India. Thus, trade migration of the people, movement of capital, goods, ideas, inventions, and many more have helped in creating a global world in ancient times. Next, Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was the explorer who discovered the vast continent of America. He took the sea route to reach there. Next, First World War, the war which broke out in 1914 in engulfed almost the entire world. The war was fought in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. Because of the unprecedented extent of its spread and its total nature, it is known as the First World War. Next, the chutney music. Chutney music, popular in Trinidad and Guyana, is a creative contemporary expression of the most indenture experience. It is an example of cultural fusion between Caribbean islands and India. Now, next are on next point, next page. So we will cover these all things from here. We are covering these all very important content which is necessary to observe these important points for your examination. Now let's start from here. Role of the Silk Route. The routes on which cargoes carried Chinese silk to the west were known as silk routes. Historians have discovered several silk routes over land and by sea, covering vast regions of Asia and connecting Asia with Europe and Northern Africa. Even poetry from China, textile and species from India and South Asia also traveled the same route. In return, precious metals like gold and silver flowed from Europe to Asia. Culturally, Buddhism emerged from the eastern India and spread in several directions through the Silk Route. Now, next point is indentured labor. Is a bonded labor under the contract to work for an employer for a specific amount of time to pay for his passage to new country or home. Next, reasons why it can be described as new system of slavery. Next, point one, many migrants agreed to take up work to escape poverty and oppression in their home village. They were cheated and were provided false information by the agents regarding their destination, modes of travel, the nature of work and working conditions. Second point, often migrants were not even told that they were to go on long sea journeys. Third point, the tasks allotted to them on plantations were extremely heavy and could not be completed in a day. They were beaten or imprisoned. Fourth point, deductions were made from wages if the work was considered unsatisfactory. And fifth, living and working conditions were harsh, and there were a few legal rights to protect them. So these all points are really very important to understand, and how was our past, and to be aware for your examination also. So now next, Corn Law. A Corn Law was first introduced in Britain in 1804 when the landowners who dominated parliament sought to protect their profits by imposing a duty on imported corn. This led to an expansion of British wheat farming and to high bread prices. Next, effects of abolition of corn laws. This allowed the merchants in England to import food grains from abroad at lower cost. So it's one. It led to widespread unemployment in the agricultural sector. Second, it also resulted in the rise of a prosperous capitalist class in the urban area. Third, unemployment in the rural sector forced the movement of labor from agricultural to industrial sector. Now next, Europeans were affected to Africa because Africa had vast resource of land and minerals. Europeans came to Africa hoping to establish plantations and mines to produce crops and minerals which they could export to Europe. The loss of cattle diseases destroyed African livelihoods. Planters, uh, mine owners, and colonial governments now successfully monopolized what scare cattle resources remained to force Africans into the labor market. Next, African countries were militarily weak and backward, so they were in no position to resist military aggression by European states. Now, next, we are covering these all things from here. Yes, still here, it's okay. Food offers many examples of long distance cultural exchange. So, one point, traders are travelers. Travelers introduced food crops to the lands. They traveled. They traveled. Many of our common foods, such as potatoes, maize, soya, groundnuts, tomatoes, chilies, and sweet potatoes, came from America. Second, it is believed that noodles traveled west from China to become spaghetti, or perhaps Arab traders took pasta to 15th to 5th century Sicily and islands in Italy. Indian rotis have become uh, tortillas in Mexico. Tortillas in Mexico, America, and Western countries. Third, Europe's poor people began to eat better and live longer with the introduction of potato. Now, next, economic effect of the First World War on Britain. So what happened here? Point one. To finance war expenditure, Britain had borrowed liberally from US. The meant that at the end of the war, Britain was burdened with huge external debts. Second, the war had disturbed Britain's position of dominance in the Indian market. In India, the nationalist movement had gathered strength and anti-British feelings had become stronger among common people. Promotion of Indian industries had become one of the objectives of the nationalist leaders, which adversely affected industries in Britain. Third, there were widespread increase in unemployment coupled with decrease in agricultural and industrial production. Cotton production collapsed and export of cotton from Britain fell dramatically. This chapter is really very interesting, and knowing about our past, and we are just covering these all very important content. which is very necessary to understand, and for your exam also, because many questions raised directly from this content. So be aware and command on these facts. Next, unable to modernize, Britain was finding it difficult to compete with US, Germany and Japan internationally. Next, reinterpressed cattle plague and infectious viral diseases of cattle, domestic buffalo, etc. Now, opium trade, the traffic that developed in the 18th and 19th centuries, in which Great Britain exported opium grown in India to China. The Great Depression, an economic situation in which most part of world experienced the catastrophic declines in production, employment, incomes, and trade, began around 1929 and lasted till the mid 1930s. Now next, Great Depression in US between 1929 to 30. So what was the Great Depression here? So number one, agricultural overproduction. Falling of the agricultural price had made it even worse. As and the prices fell, the agricultural income declined. To meet this situation, farmers brought large volume of produce to the market to maintain their small income. The excessive supply couldn't be sold due to lack of buyers and farm produce rotted. Second, US loan prices. In the mid 1920s, many countries financed their investment through loans from the US. The overseas lender panicked at the first sign of trouble. Countries that had depended crucially on US loans faced an acute crisis due to withdrawal of US loans. It led to the failure of major banks and collapse of currencies. Thus, we have completed these all things. It's really very important and interesting to understand, and as well as to give your answers in examination also. Now, next is NIEO. Although there was unprecedented economic growth in the West and Japan, nothing was done about the poverty and lack of development in countries which were earlier colonies. Thus, there arose a need for developing nations to organize themselves into G77 group to demand a new international economic order. It is called NIEO. So, it means New International Economic Order. So, NIEO meant a system that would give them control over their own natural resources, more development assistance, a fairer price for raw materials, and better access for their manufactured goods in developed markets. Now next is Bretton Woods Agreement. So what was the agreement? The main aim of the post-war international economic system was to preserve economic stability and full employment in the industrial world. A framework of the scheme was prepared. The famous economist John Maynard Keynes directed the preparation of the framework, and it was agreed upon the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference held in July 1944 at the Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in USA. According to the Bretton Woods, the conference, the International Monetary Fund, it is called in short IMF, and the World Bank were set up. IMF was set up to deal with external surpluses and deficit of its members nations, and the World Bank was finance post-war reconstruction. These two are referred as the Bretton Woods institutions, or sometimes Bretton Woods twins. Decision making in these institutions was controlled by the Western industrial power, and the US even had veto over their key decisions. The post-war economic system is often described as a Bretton Woods system. Thus, we have completed this chapter, and after completing this chapter, uh, I will come with a new chapter. Its name is the age of industrialization. So, in my next video, I will come with this chapter, and keep your revision properly. And thus, I will fulfill these all chapters properly. And after completing this history sections, we will be able to complete these all section of social science, where we are covering these all chapters from social science. And after that, I will come with some previous year question papers, which is very necessary to practice for that, and those all important and guessed questions, which is based on board examination, as well as its mixed question for practice. So keep revision.